Securing your community. Hey everybody, this is Mike with Asymmetrical Preparedness. Going to talk about it a little bit here, but I'm starting a series over on Patreon, links in the description below, that's going to be talking a lot about this. I'm going to do things like this. Talk about scenarios, plans for different layouts of neighborhoods. Being able to secure your neighborhood, the area where you live, whether it's urban, suburban, or rural, or in the middle of nowhere. If you're in the middle of nowhere, obviously you probably have more time to prepare and more availability and options to secure your location. The more urban you are, the higher the population density is where you are, way more threats. The difficulty level just grows exponentially. Much more difficult. Talking about in an urban setting, like say you live in a apartment building, like a high-rise apartment building in a major city downtown, man, I couldn't even do a video about that. There's so many things that you need to think about. But I want you guys to start thinking about your specific area. Avenues of approach. High-speed avenues of approach, mostly at the beginning. High-speed avenues of approach, roads. How are you going to secure them? Where can you secure them? What are the terrain features around said roads? Where's the high ground? Where's the low ground? Where's micro terrain that bad guys can use to follow to get in closer to your area, to start engaging you, to start threatening you? Like I said, we're talking about this a lot more in depth on Patreon. But I want you guys to start analyzing things. Pay attention to what's around you. Who's around you? What threats are around you? Where are things like sources of water? That's important for water to drink, but also for security purposes. Water can be used in different ways. As a method of travel, method of approach, a method of escaping and not being able to be tracked. It's much more difficult to track somebody through water. If they're swimming, it's almost impossible, except for when they're getting out on the other side or wherever they get out. But anyway, what assets do you have around you also is important. What neighbors are on board? Which of the people that live around you have defensive tools? What kind of defensive tools do they have? That's important. How many seeds do they have? Because that's always important, right? We need to be able to grow our gardens. What is your terrain like? Is it heavily wooded like this? Is it urban? Is it desert? Is it Arctic? This topic is huge as far as your ability to secure and how you should go about securing your areas. That's why I'm going to try to do a bunch of video series on Patreon, trying to throw down as many scenarios as possible and talk about as much stuff as possible because it is such a huge topic. I've had people email me and say, hey, would you be interested in doing a security assessment of my area, of my house, my property, stuff like that? And they're like, well, how much would you charge? And I have no idea. I mean, and they sent me a couple like aerial photographs of like just their yard and showed like these two roads. Well, I don't know where those roads head. I don't know where the population centers are. I don't know anything about the area. I cannot give you a proper assessment. I could tell you how you might be able to just secure your property in the best generic way possible, but it's not going to be effective at all. There are things you can do generically, like simple things like locking your doors, barring your windows, having things in place that you could use to block roads, vehicles, logs, bricks, lots of them, sandbags, tools and or equipment to dig ditches, to stop vehicles, barbed wire, caltrops, a lot of different things that you can use. Burning pits of oil and moats with, with alligators in them. No, seriously. There's a lot to the topic. But seriously, take a hard look at where you live, who's around you, what types of houses are they also matters. Are they stone and brick houses or are they wood houses? Different defensive capabilities, right? If it's a stone and brick house, you can much more effectively or much easier, it's much easier to ballistically harden a position inside that kind of structure than it would be just a wood insulation sheetrock type house, right? Put some sandbags down, you wouldn't have put as many down because you already got the bricks or the rocks, stuff like that. Avenues approach, like I said, high-speed avenues approach are the biggest threat right off the bat because that's the easiest way in. Further down the road, if we're in some kind of extended long-term event, it may be people coming through the woods because people got smarter and the people that are still alive have gotten better at what they're doing. But initially, think about roads, the easy way in. Paths through the woods too, though. If there's like a hiking path, a walking path, if you have a green belt by you, where do the kids play? What's the commonly known, access to and from? But really get to know those people around you. Talk to people. And this is a thing that you should be able to, after last year, talk to people about and not be weird. Say, hey, there's a lot going down. There's a lot of people, you're going to be losing their jobs. There's going to be a lot of desperate people. Things are getting kind of crazy out here. Well, have you ever thought about what happens if like a roving band of looters and or what if some rioters show up? What if a protest is happening down the street and it gets kind of wild and it spills over in our neighborhood? Have you ever thought about what you're going to do? Talk about things like that with your neighbors. That's a common sense adult thing to talk about. I don't think you'd come across as too weird if you started talking to your neighbors about things like that. At least talk to your neighbors about something. Get to know them. Build community. Because those people around you, immediately around you, are probably going to be the people that you're stuck with if things go south, especially if they go south quickly. Think about these things. Make these plans now. It is a large topic. There's a lot to it. You can spend a lot of money doing it, or if you have natural things around you that you can use to do these things like logs, trees, if you happen to already have, say, like a tractor, an excavator, something like that to put in ditches, whatever, then you might be better off. Man, this lighting is getting really weird. Here, let me move it over here really quick. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Population density, pay attention to that. But, man, just a sec. Okay, had to clear my brain for a sec. One of the things that's really important to do is to think about concealment. How can people approach your location concealed? Identify these things like these trees here, these bushes, woods. Identify them now. You're not going to go out there and cut it all down now, right? But if things go really bad, you got to identify certain features that you can remove to remove concealment and or cover for those people approaching your position, your neighborhood, whatever it may be. Because they look nice now, but you don't want people to be able to sneak up and get really close to you. You want as much standoff as possible. You want to stop them as far away from your home as possible. You don't want the bad guys getting right on your doorstep. That's not the place for security, for neighborhood security. It's not right in your cul-de-sac. It's not right at the door to your apartment building. It's not even at the corner of the street by your apartment building. Really, I mean, it may be if you have to, but you don't want your driveway to be your defensive position. It's too late by then. I mean, the odds are things are not going to go well. You got to stop them further out. You don't want any threats right there. Especially you don't want things flying, your direction and going into your house and where your family is. No bueno. Not at all. So these are just some things to think about. Like I said, we're going to be talking about this a lot on Patreon. Check it out. Link in the description below. $1 a month. Come on. I mean, this kind of knowledge and advice I feel is well worth it. A lot of this is my opinion. My knowledge is based on years of security experience in the military, private sector, stuff like that. Yeah, I've done security vulnerability assessments on nuclear weapons facilities and a lot of other stuff. So a lot of my mindset and the way I look at things is from that aspect. I have to remember we don't have the funding to secure our locations like the government does, like the military does, right? Yes. So we have to think more practical. But you can do it practically. So I love you guys. Remember, prepping is living insurance. Have a wonderful day and blessings to you and yours.